everybody, it's your girl, Pony, and today I am going to be discussing why exactly I love Hexiciah's Steam and Headmistress Bloodgood so much. Now, this video is going to be a little bit less edited than my last one, partially just because it's overall going to be a little bit more chill of a video, but also because the characters that I'm talking about don't have a particularly large amount of screen time, so I hope that you will still enjoy it, and we'll get into it. These two are some of my absolute favorite characters, and if you've known me for like any amount of time, you probably know that because I just sort of don't shut up about them. Together, they are also one of my favorite couples, and sometimes people find that surprising because they don't have that much screen time, and a lot of people don't even know that they ever had romance. And that's exactly why I wanted to make this video, along with the fact that the lovely August requested it, and of course that gives me an excuse to ramble about my faves. So let's go. Bloodgood and Hexiciah only have one conversation that we get to see, but my goodness, it is such a conversation. It's pretty short, so I'm just gonna go ahead and read it to you. You could come with me, Nora. Or you could stay, Hexiciah. I believe Monster High benefits from your experience, and the students love you. Just the students, Nora? My feelings are irrelevant, and my place is here. Tis futile to argue against a calling, I know. But perhaps one day you'll pass the position of headmistress on to someone else. Perhaps. That is only 6 lines of dialogue, but in those 6 lines, we have so many things happening. Firstly, we see that these two both want to be around each other. They both are essentially offering the other to stay with them. We also see Nora brushing her own feelings off and trying to give him reasons to say that aren't her. And this is despite Hexiciah very clearly caring about her feelings, considering that he's the one who prompts her to take them into account. Then, an agreement between the two that while they may be apart for now, they haven't given up on the future, both with their callings or with each other. There is still perhaps. None of this is even getting into the bittersweetness of that line and the conversation as a whole, knowing what eventually happens to Hexiciah. Within this paragraph, which is only 63 words, they have established a relationship between two characters who we, to this point, had never seen interact, and it would be so easy for that to feel out of nowhere or forced, but the way that these two speak makes it clear that they have known each other for far longer, which is supplemented by Freaky Fusion, as we know Hexiciah worked at Monster High in 1814. There's a level of care and history woven throughout this. I am still astonished that the author, Eric Hardy, was able to pull it off. Not to mention the fact that Hexiciah seems to recall this conversation in a dream during his century-long sleep. It's the only dream that's written down in his diary. And I want to make it clear, I'm not saying that's the only dream he had. I'm sure that in 100 years he had more dreams than that. But it is the only one we know about. And I find that interesting. And then there is the absolute bombshell that upon reading this for the first time, the fact that he's talking to Bloodgood specifically is a reveal, because he doesn't even mention her being headmistress until the very last line, and we didn't even know her first name until this diary, which I should mention is one of the very last entries we ever got into the original Monster High continuity. I think one of the reasons that this works is because these are both characters who we know have a lot of past that we don't see. They've both been alive for centuries at least, and there's a certain air of mystery around them. So when you introduce something new, it feels more like something being uncovered than something being added. Speaking of their pasts, we don't know exactly when these two met, But we do know that they knew each other for nearly 100 years before Hexiciah went missing, and that by the end of that time, Hexiciah still considered Bloodgood his best friend. That is a long time, and that is wild to me. Considering that he still considered her his best friend, we can probably infer that they were still on good terms at that time. So, we have this relationship that lasted nearly a century, and eventually turned into a bit of a romance, with no evidence of any sort of falling out. And then Hexiciah and Robecca both go missing, at around exactly the same time. Can I mention that based on my calculations, this happened only 3 years before Monster High's 100th anniversary? You know, the school that Bloodgood has fought for, and Hexiciah was one of the first teachers at when hardly anyone else believed in it. Yeah. Needless to say, there's a lot of stuff happening at this point in time, both in terms of actual events and in terms of emotion. Monster High opened in 1814, and both Bloodgood and Hexiciah have been there from the beginning, as we saw in Freaky Fusion. I bring this up because at the time, Monster High was considered a long shot at best and a guaranteed failure at worst. Bloodgood even lost a majority of her friends and colleagues when she applied to be headmistress. Looking at all of this, everything is starting to click as to why Bloodgood seems so guarded in things like her bio, and of course the "my feelings are irrelevant" line. Let's not forget that Hexiciah had his own share of monsters calling him crazy. Both of these two believed in and supported each other, even when a lot of the world didn't. Recognizing all of what came before Hexiciah's disappearance really cements how big of a deal that was, especially for Robecca. This video may not be specifically about her, but I feel like she deserves appreciation and to be acknowledged, and this is something that she really struggles with. After all of that time, he's gone, and eventually it reaches the point where, for Bloodgood, she's had to miss him for longer than she even knew him. Eventually, much to the joy of everyone involved, Hexiciah is found. He's reunited with Robecca and his friends, and as far as canon confirmed events go, that's all we get. It really is a wonderful ending, wrapping up one of the Diary continuity's ongoing plot lines, and I adore these characters, so I find myself wanting to know what's next for them. The rest of this is going to be a bit of speculation about how that might pan out. It is all just my ideas and thoughts, so please don't take any of it as pure fact. I'm just very interested in the aftermath of all of this. 100 years is a very long time to be gone, and a very long time to miss someone. Things can't go back to just exactly how they were before. Too much has changed. But just because they can't be the same, doesn't mean they can't be amazing. For Hexiciah and Nora specifically, I imagine their reunion was, as he says, as joyous as ever, and a huge surprise to her. As the shock wears off, there would maybe be a bit of uncertainty as they both try to navigate the new circumstances. I actually don't think they'd address their relationship for a bit, mainly because Hexiciah has an entire new world to get used to, and of course Bloodgood would want to give him time to do so, and to reconnect with Robecca before she even thought of putting herself into the equation. On Hexiciah's end, I think there may be some worry that simply too much time has passed, and that the world has moved on without him. I also get vibes that he feels guilty for being gone based on how much he apologizes to Robecca, but maybe I'm just reading that wrong. At first, things may be a bit confusing, but eventually, once it settles down, I think that it's like seeing an old friend and being surprised by how quickly things click again. I like to think that they could work it out, and after everything, I think that they really deserve to. So that is at least part of why I love Bloodgood and Hexiciah. I could honestly talk about these two for hours, getting into all the different facts about them and all of my headcanons, but to keep this at least semi-brief, I will refrain for now. I hope that you all enjoyed this video and maybe learned something, as I know that some of the things I discussed are kind of hidden or obscure. And I hope that you have a bloody fantastic day, and to see you soon.